Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In news from the campaign trail, President Obama's criticized FBI Director James Comey for announcing an investigation into a new batch of Hillary Clinton emails. They were discovered as part of a probe into former Congressmember Anthony Weiner, the estranged husband of top Clinton aide Huma Abedin, who's under investigation after he sent illicit sext messages to an underage girl. Comey's announcement only days before Election Day has jolted the race and narrowed Hillary Clinton's lead over Donald Trump. This is President Obama.
And I do think that there is a norm that, when there are investigations, we don't operate on innuendo, we don't operate on incomplete information, we don't operate on leaks. We operate based on concrete decisions that are made. When this was investigated thoroughly the last time, the conclusion of the FBI, the conclusion of the Justice Department, the conclusion of repeated congressional investigations was that she had made some mistakes, but that there wasn't anything there that was prosecutable.
President Obama is campaigning for Clinton every day this week in North Carolina, as well as Ohio and Florida. In more election news, a woman who has sued Donald Trump for allegedly raping her 2 decades ago when she was 13 years old canceled a scheduled news conference Wednesday. The woman's lawsuit alleges, quote, Trump tied plaintiff to a bed, exposed himself to plaintiff, then proceeded to forcibly rape plaintiff. Trump responded to plaintiff's pleas by violently striking plaintiff in the face with his open hand and screaming that he would do whatever he wanted, unquote. The lawsuit alleges Trump raped her at a party hosted by billionaire Jeffrey Epstein, who's been jailed on charges of soliciting sex from a minor. The woman, who has remained anonymous, was scheduled to come forward Wednesday, but canceled the conference after her lawyer, Lisa Bloom, said she had received multiple death threats. Bloom said, quote, she has decided she is too afraid to show her face. She is in terrible fear, unquote. Trump's lawyer has denied all the allegations, saying they are, quote, not only categorically false, but disgusting, unquote. In local election news in Louisiana, police attacked protesters with pepper spray as the group demonstrated against U.S. Senate candidate, former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard David Duke, outside at a candidate debate Wednesday night held at the historically African-American college Dillard University in New Orleans. At least one protester was detained by police and others were forced out of the venue. The 6-candidate debate was closed to the public and occurred inside an empty auditorium. In Mississippi, authorities are investigating the burning and vandalism of an historic African-American church in Greenville Tuesday night. The 111-year-old Hopewell Missionary Baptist Church was torched, then spray-painted with the words, "Vote Trump." Authorities say they're investigating the attack as a hate crime. Greenville Mayor Eric Simmons called the incident, quote, an attack on the black church and the black community. This happened in the 50s and the 60s. This should not happen in 2016, he said. In Iraq, hundreds of families are fleeing the fighting in eastern Mosul amidst the U.S.-backed Iraqi army's offensive to retake the city from ISIS. Amnesty International is accusing some of the militias fighting against ISIS of revenge attacks against local villagers. The group says some militia members have engaged in torture, tying suspected ISIS sympathizers to cars and driving them through villages, beating people's faces with cables and holding them inside poultry cages in public. The Pentagon says 2 U.S. soldiers have been killed in Kunduz, Afghanistan. U.S. soldiers have been backing the Afghan forces battling the Taliban, which took control of the city of Kunduz in October. Kunduz is also the site of the deadly U.S. bombing of a Doctors Without Borders hospital in October of 2015, which killed 42 people, including patients and staff. This comes as the United Nations is warning of a new wave of displacement in Afghanistan amidst the ongoing violence. At least 1 million Afghans have been uprooted from their homes by the violence this year. The Pentagon says a U.S. drone strike killed an al-Qaeda leader in Syria last month. Navy Captain Jeff Davis says the strike on October 17th killed Haidar Kirkhan, who allegedly had ties to Osama bin Laden. In France, authorities have forced the remaining 1,600 refugees out of the Calais refugee camp known as the Jungle. Authorities have been in the process of demolishing the camp for more than a week and busing the camp's approximately 7,000 residents to refugee intake centers across France. The final refugees removed Wednesday were predominantly children and teenagers, mostly from Afghanistan and South Sudan. They've been refusing to leave the refugee camp, hoping to win asylum in Britain, where many say they have family members. Meanwhile, in breaking news from Britain, the plan for the country to leave the European Union has been thrown into turmoil after a court ruled today that the British Parliament has to vote on whether to, in fact, begin the formal exit proceedings. In June, Britain stunned the world by voting to leave the European Union during a nationwide referendum, leading to the resignation of Prime Minister David Cameron. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has spoken out against the crackdown on press freedom in Turkey, where 170 news outlets have been forced to close since the failed military coup attempt in July. Earlier this week, police raided the Istanbul office of the prominent Cumhuriyet newspaper, detaining at least 12 journalists and administrators on terrorism charges. The newspaper won the 2016 Right Livelihood Award. This is the German Chancellor, Merkel.
As to
Turkey, it is extremely alarming to me and the federal government that the freedom of the press is being curtailed time and again. The latest example of these already very unfortunate developments is what is happening to the editors and journalists of the newspaper Cumhuriyet. We have serious doubts that this is allowed under the principles of the constitutional state.
In Iowa, a man has been arrested following the fatal shootings of 2 police officers. Suspect Scott Michael Green, who is white, is accused of killing the 2 white police officers in ambush-style attacks early Wednesday morning. The shootings come a few weeks after Green brought a Confederate battle flag to a football game at Urbandale High School and waved it in front of people of color. He was thrown out of the stadium by police. He's also been accused of multiple instances of domestic violence. A few days after he brought the Confederate flag to the football game, he was arrested and charged with elderly abuse after he reportedly attacked his mother. He was also charged for domestic violence in 2001. The charges were later dropped. In North Dakota, police deployed pepper spray and tear gas against dozens of Native American water protectors during a standoff at Cantapita Creek, north of the main Otsetesakwan camp, where thousands have been resisting the construction of the $3.8 billion Dakota Access Pipeline. At least 2 people were shot with non-lethal projectiles. Video and photos show police firing the pepper spray and tear gas at the water protectors, who were peacefully standing in the creek. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers had ordered police to arrest the Native Americans and destroy a bridge that members of the camp had constructed over the creek in order to protect a sacred burial ground they say are being destroyed by construction and law enforcement activity. This comes after President Obama said the Army Corps of Engineers is considering plans to reroute the pipeline. We'll have more on the latest standoff and President Obama's comments after headlines with the chair of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, Dave Archambault. In Alabama, the Colonial Pipeline remains shut down following a fatal explosion along a section of the pipeline Monday in Shelby County. 1 worker died and 5 were hospitalized after columns of fire burst from the punctured Alabama pipeline and shot up 150 feet in the air. Colonial Pipeline Company has said as many as 168,000 gallons of gasoline could have burned, spilled, evaporated, or remained in the pipeline following the blast. Democrats on the House Energy and Commerce Committee are seeking an investigation of the Georgia-based company. This comes after this same pipeline leaked nearly 340,000 gallons of gasoline in central Alabama in September, forcing the line to shut down for 12 days and leading 6 governors to declare states of emergency as gas prices rose throughout the region. The Colonial Pipeline carries 1.3 million barrels of gasoline a day down to refineries in Texas and Louisiana, accounting for a full 40% of the region's gasoline. We'll have more on the pipeline explosion later in the broadcast. In more oil and gas news, General Electric and Baker Hughes have announced plans to merge, which would create the second-largest oil field service company in the world after Schlumberger. The merger comes amidst increasing consolidation in the oil and gas industry. And in northern Michigan, a Nestle bottling plant that's been sucking water out of aquifers that feed Lake Michigan for free for years is now petitioning the state regulatory agency for permission to expand and pump even more fresh water out of the ground for free. The Nestle Ice Mountain bottling plant in Mecosta County, Michigan, is proposing a $36 million expansion of its plant. It's asking the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality for permission to more than double the amount of water it can pump out of the ground from 150 gallons per minute to 400 gallons per minute. The bottling plant has been the site of a more than decades-long struggle by local residents who oppose the extraction of the groundwater for profit. This is local activist Peggy Case.
So the water that Nestle is bottling here and elsewhere in our state is coming from the Great Lakes Basin. It is feeding here into Deadstream and Cold Creek, then into the Little Muskegon River, that aquifer, and then eventually, ultimately, into Lake Michigan. So it's Great Lakes Basin water. It's part of the commons. It belongs to all of us. And part of the reason the people in Mecosta were pretty upset about it is that the extraction of that water was being taken out of the watershed. It was being, the streams were being pumped down to the point where the dead stream looked like a mud hole at one point, and bottled and shipped all over the world.
To see our full interview with Peggy Case and other activists from when Democracy Now! Was in Michigan, go to our website, democracynow.org. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Nermeen Sheikh. Welcome to our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.